After the very long ride of yesterday, I had a good night of sleep at my camp spot near Yelo. After finishing my morning ritual, I saddled up again for what would be the last stretch to my sister in Rifos. Well, I had 200 kilometers left, so I could do it in one day, but since my sister already had my mom visiting her for the last 3 days, I granted her a day of rest before another family member would show up at her doorstep. So the plan is to ride easy today, find another wild camp spot for tonight, and arrive in Rifos tomorrow morning. And again, Norway amazes me with its beautiful scenery. While I was riding through this gorgeous valley with its spectacular green vegetation, steel blue lakes and snowy mountaintops on the horizon. Since I didn't have to cover a great distance anymore, I decided to explore every possible location to find a camp spot. Norway was full of these magical places where you can set up camp near a river or a lake to enjoy nature at its finest. So I started exploring all the dead-end roads, rivers and lakes I came across to find the best place. I love camping in the wild. A new spot for every day, cooking my meal in front of my tent, washing myself in a cold river or lake. It's just the overall freedom it gives you. But still, I was looking forward to the few days I would spend in a real house with a real shower and a real bed. It would be a welcome break in the middle of my journey. When I was following this road called the Panoramawegen, which totally stood up for his name by the way, I realized that in a little more than a kilometer I would enter the Tet Norway for the first time. The Trans-Euro Trail passes my sister's house, so after my break I will mainly be following the Tet for the rest of my trip. But then suddenly the road was closed due to road work. The very last stretch of the Panoramawegen was closed. There was only a path for bicycles and pedestrians. I had only 1 kilometer to go, so I started looking on my map for a detour. But it seemed that I had to make a detour of about 70 kilometers to get to the point where I needed to be. I had to ride back for almost 40 and then take another route to get around this lake. As I was standing there considering my options, this guy came up to me. He just parked his car there to walk his dog, and when he saw me, he immediately knew what problem I was facing. "You considering a detour?" he asked. "Yeah, it's my only option, right?" He said, "Well, you can also take the bicycle path. Your motorbike easily fits through, and all the locals do it." So there I went, hoping I could trust the guy, and I didn't end up at another dead end or an angry police officer. But it was definitely worth a shot. And I made it through. Apart from maybe a little agitated biker, some rocks, and some other obstacles like gates, the route was perfectly passable. And not only did I make it through without getting arrested, I also finally entered the Norwegian TED. I was totally in my riding zone when I noticed that I had only 40 kilometers left to my sister. I really had to find a camp spot now, before I ended up camping in her backyard. Since I was running out of water to drink and cook, my camping options were reduced to places with streaming water. And of course there was very little to find in this area. After looking for a while, I saw this very small stream on my map and I managed to pull up with my bike to put up camp. In between the bushes and a gazillion mosquitoes, it was far from this magical place I had imagined for tonight. But there was room for my tent, they had streaming water and beer. This morning my routine was a little bit different than the previous days. Last night I decided the streaming water was a no-go for consumption. Every time I scooped up some water to cook and filter to use for dinner, I spotted some alien-like insects swimming in it. I didn't know what they were, but I didn't really trust it, especially with the combination of the stream being very small and all the cows wandering around it. I had a small amount of tap water left in my hydration pack, which I specifically saved for drinking. But I figured a half a liter of beer would keep me hydrated enough for the night, so I used the water for cooking, and after that I had not a single drop left. Brushing my teeth with the beer wasn't even that bad, but using it for cooking oatmeal the next morning seemed like a less good idea. So after waking up, I immediately packed up to start my search for fresh water. As I was still pretty high on some mountain plateau, it was fairly cold, and I was hoping that when I would leave the bushes, the sun would warm me up. But out in the open there was this harsh cold wind, which was overruling the sun by far. Luckily I found a nice picnic spot near fresh streaming water, so I could drink, wash and make myself a hot breakfast. I was descending into the town of Rifos, and due to the altitude, the disappearing wind and the sun getting higher, it was getting warmer and warmer. And then I arrived at my destination. Next to the road appears the house of my sister, her boyfriend Danny, and their dog Chaka. This is where I would stay the next couple of days before hitting the road again for the second half of this trip.